you doing? How you guys doing? Viral. All right. So Else is working out some audio issues and
We're
he'll be
good.
getting things set up here shortly. Oh, he's got it set up, so we
Yep.
should be fine here. Lemon says, "Where's Else's cam?" He's working on it. He's working on it. How you doing, Armored Monkey? How you doing, everybody? Welcome on in. So you know what? I don't even keep track of it. I depend on no one to keep track of this for me.
57.
What episode are we on? 57. 57. Oh man.
Dang.
Game's not out yet. Ugh. Gosh. One day we'll touch grass. But anyways.
Not today.
Yeah.
Not today.
Yes, we got Red with us. Definitely going to be an awesome one. I'm excited. I'm very excited. So let's go ahead and get in our proper introductions. Welcome to episode 57 of the Voices of Verra with myself, Nice Gaming, No One, and of course our special guest, Red Beer Flynn. And we couldn't do this without you, the Voices of Verra. That's right, everybody. 57 episodes, and we have a very special guest. A lot of you MMO enthusiasts, if you're on YouTube especially, you should be aware of who this guy is that we have as our guest today. So you guys be on your best behavior. We have company. How you doing, Saul, man? Like, you guys be on your best behavior, you know? Don't scare them away. We're nice, wholesome people here. You've been playing AOC Simulator in my mind? Yeah, dude. Like, it's funny. Sometimes I sit down to like game, whether I just want to jump on New World or just boot up something random. I'm just like, I'm just gonna work on an asset creation video, or I'm just gonna start a random stream. Like, I rather, with the state of MMOs, I'd rather just talk about this game than to play some active games. And it's sad. It's really sad, and we'll be talking more about that today. But we'll first start off. Well, actually, let me give you guys a lay of show, if you will, a rough lay of show. You guys know we just wing it, but we pretty much want to get Redbeard's insight on things. And so the theme of today's stream is, what can old MMOs teach Ashes of Creation? Now, we obviously know that Ashes of Creation has a lot of inspiration. Steven's a actual MMO gamer, and he hires actual MMO gamers. And that's a big point of emphasis. And so you can see some inspirations coming through, whether that's the Arc Age, the Lineage 2, even the World of Warcrafts of the world, if you will. And is there more? Like, does it show enough? Did it learn from previous titles enough? What has it learned, and so forth? And so Redbeard is a lot more experienced. Like, he was playing MMOs like EverQuest when I was still playing on my console. Just only thing I was playing on a gaming PC back then, I think, was like Age of Empires, like real time strategy games and stuff like that. I wasn't like playing MMOs at back then. So
I mean,
yeah,
Age
we're
of
gonna.
Empires 2 is goated, so
It is, man. It is. I need to go ahead and I only have Age of Empires 3 on this PC, I think. I'm pretty sure that's 3 that I bought. It was like on sales. Like, yeah, I gotta get that. Blett says, WoW PvP population over years tells us the PvEers are just hysterical. Interesting. What do you mean by that?
What do you mean?
Okay, so first off, I want to give obvious big shout out and introduction to our guest, Redbeard Flynn. I'm gonna pass the stage to you. Tell us about your channel, what you like to do, what kind of content you like. I know you're on Twitch as well. What is your channel's goals, current content, etc.? Just give us the layout show. Also, not to beat you to this plug, but he's something I think is very interesting. He is actually an author as well.
What?
So if your MMO has bad storytelling, yeah, he's gonna judge you. So yeah, as you were.
Well, shit. Thank you for that introduction. So, anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Redbeard Flynn. I have a channel on MMORPGs that started as a channel basically on EverQuest and has kind of grown out to encompass a lot of MMORPGs, including a lot of indie MMORPGs like Ash Creation, but mostly Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen and Monsters and Memories. I play a shit ton of MMOs. I have a lot of opinions. They're kind of loud. They're kind of annoying sometimes, but I'm happy to be here and happy to talk.
Loud and annoying opinions. That's like our whole thing. Yeah. You fit in right. You fit in right well. Yes. Um. So, and just to catch up with you, else, how have you been since the last show?
I've been good, man. Been really good. Had a busy weekend and ready to get back into it this week. We had the Bard Showcase, so not yet off that high and ready to just ride it out for another 10 days before the next AMAs. So
10
ready to
days,
go.
yeah. And then another monthly live stream in theory 2 weeks after that. We're getting spoiled
Well,
this
we're
month.
spoiled,
You
man.
guys
It's
are focused on
crazy.
the delay. You guys were focused on, "Oh, it's delayed to October," but we get the double dip this month, okay? Focus on the positive. Do have some positive energy, guys. How you doing, Arctic? Welcome on in. So, you said a couple of games there, Monsters and Memories, Pantheon,
Mhm.
I know you've played EverQuest in the past. What
I played a
upcoming
lot of
M
MMOs.
Yeah, yeah, like, I've seen you, like, dabble in a lot of things and speak on a lot of things, so I was like, "Yeah, this guy knows his stuff. This guy knows his stuff." Because most of those older games, like, I'm not a like, I say it all the time on this show, but I'm not afraid to admit, "Hey, I haven't played every MMO." I've done a lot of research, of course, I've watched a lot of videos, like, I watch so much World of Warcraft not PvP, just in general, for someone that's never played it, just because I know I don't play it and I wanna be when someone talks about certain things, I want to at least have like a frame of reference, if you will. And so, most things, like I said, come from watching YouTube videos or reviews, and some stuff I watch live. But mostly the only thing I watch that I don't actually play is WoW. EverQuest is one of those things where I've just seen it. Like I look at it and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, do like that looks dated. Obviously, it's a it's an older MMO, right? But and so that's not exactly fair to say, but what upcoming MMO, forget the MMOs of the past, what
Mhm.
upcoming MMO do you feel has the promise? And you're like, I know you're not putting all your eggs in a basket per se, but like, what upcoming MMO has you sitting there like, man, I got my eyes on this project. I think this might be the one. And don't feel compelled to say Ashes of Creation because you're here. Like, what is your honest thing? Like, or it could be something that you're playing right now or
Yeah.
something pre early access, whatever.
Yeah. So I mean, the interesting thing is I've been working on a video of my most anticipated MMORPGs. And one of the things that was really telling in that video is when I was doing it, I was going through this whole list and I was like, dang, like the top 3 MMOs I have on here are all indie funded, crowd funded MMOs. And I think there's a really big reason for that. But all 3 of them were all there. And so I'll stick with the top 3. And I won't put them in any order. I'll let y'all figure out that order for me. But basically, Monsters and Memories, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, and Ashes of Creation. And for a
Okay.
couple different reasons on each of them. Um, if I just for anyone who doesn't know, Monsters and Memories is probably the newest to the party. It's made by a former EverQuest dev and a decently sized team doing basically creating it as we're seeing it right now. They've got a stress test this weekend. It is essentially EverQuest now, like old
Mm,
EverQuest, but now.
yeah.
It's very, very, very classically inspired PVE MMO. Although they did have a free for all PvP server when they did their last test, and then Pantheon: Rise of the Fallen, big crowd-funded
Yeah.
PVE MMO, and I don't think I need to say anything about Ashes of Creation.
Yeah.
Not to us. Not to us, at
Interesting.
least.
All right, you guys heard it here first. He said Ashes of Creation is his number one, Pantheon's his number two, and Monsters and
That's
Memories
what I
is his
heard.
number three. So
Yep.
I
that's
didn't
really
expect
cool. You guys heard it
slander
here
this
first.
this quick into the stream.
You told me put them in whatever order, you know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's
Lemon said no PAX day, not surprise. Oh boy. Good
fair.
old PAX day. I think that game will be good one day. I really do. I think it's just in the early stages, which is okay. I didn't think they were at a stage to where they could start like I guess
It's
charging people or like I didn't think it
yeah,
had enough content yet
it's
to get to this point.
it's an interesting one, right? Because PAX Day is an example of an MMO, which the funniest thing about that is to me, PAX Day is an example of an MMO that could have a similar pitfall early to what Ashes could, right? Because but then
Mhm.
like I mean that was my something I thought about Ashes I think a while back because of this idea of you go into a world and it's blank and
Yeah.
then
Sure.
player created content builds the world. So PAX Day will eventually be a thriving world, but the players have to build it first. And so
Mhm.
that was a concern I had with the node system with Ash Creation too, because it's that first impression is always going to be a little bit rough but then the later it's like there's like a payoff later because it's player
Yeah,
created content in a way, right?
Yep.
true.
Yeah, from
Mm,
my perspective, discussing PAX is it just felt like I want them to succeed. I don't know how you feel about
Mhm.
current MMOs in the space. Like I think there's plenty of room for a lot of different MMOs to come out and take over a lot of current games. And even if it's not something I'm super interested in, I still want it to succeed. And it just felt like this is my perspective as somebody that was interested in PAX Day, that tried it a couple times, and then when they were selling their tickets, it was just like feels a little forced. It just kind of felt like they were just pushing it, and it just didn't seem like it was changing enough for me personally to want to invest in it. But I'm not everybody. A lot of people obviously did buy in and they're very excited about where it's going. So
Yeah, I like you couldn't have, I don't think I could have said it any better than that. Like I for a while have had this idea like the genreification of MMOs being a necessary next step for MMOs because from 2004 on, you essentially had one type of MMO that kept coming out and kept coming
yeah.
out, and that's it. So everyone basically just saw, okay, WoW was super successful, let's do that.
Yep.
And before 2004, you kind of did have a genre of MMOs. You had more sandboxy MMOs, and then you had a little bit of theme park with. I mean, EverQuest I still consider a theme park MMO in some ways, but then WoW came around and just like homogenized the whole thing. But so I do agree. There's room for smaller MMOs, I think, in a lot of ways. So, I mean, not
Sure.
every MMO needs to hit 1 million players to be successful, and I think that's kind of where we're at now, is where they could be really good. So there, I hope that there's an audience for PAX Day. I hope that there's an audience that really loves it and finds it. I mean, maybe it's the Eve audience, that is from former Eve devs. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's just a fantasy version of that in a lot of ways. So I like the idea of people being able to find their world that they want to inhabit, whether that's a world that I want to inhabit or not.
Yep. I agree.
Lovely. So we'll start things off. We'll take a quick little, somewhat of a tangent. You did a video on the Bard. For
Yes.
those of you, oh, by the way, Flynn, if you could just type into Twitch chat, like say something like, "I dye my beard red." It's not actually this way. I'll pin that to the chat, and that way, if someone wants to follow you on Twitch, it could be easily found there.
Oh yeah.
Um, so
There we
you did
go.
a video on the Bard recently. For those that didn't see it, what are your overall, you can give the good and then maybe your
Mhm.
feedback, your overall thoughts about the Bard? Because I've never played an MMO with a Bard. Like I've never mained a MMO with a
Yeah.
Bard.
Yeah.
It's always been that standard holy trinity, if you will, like that normal, oh, there's a healer, there's a tank, and you guys DPS. And the Bard kind of fits in between. It's that support role. It's not the healer, it's not the tank traditionally. Um, I hear so much and seen so much about Dark Age of Camelot's Bard, like that was the one for people. And so if you want to give like a quick impressions of your Bard, well, the Ashes of Creation Bard compared
Mhm.
to Bards of the Past and your feedback.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is I'd never actually done like any kind of like React sort of thing to not React, but like any kind of like dive into the classes or archetypes of Ashes Creation because I kind of just wanted to see how the game was developing. I kind of like at one point covered the 64 classes kind of thing, but the Bard was an interesting one just because it's a class that has existed in MMOs with different takes on it, but I still think it's also an underserved class in MMOs. It's a class that you don't get to see a lot, and it's also a class that fits a role that has kind of disappeared from a lot of MMOs, and that's more of a support type role. And it's one that as I was watching the video, the stream of the Bard, I kept coming back to this sounds a lot like the EverQuest Bard.
Mm.
And the EverQuest Bard was I don't know that it wasn't the first because I mean Ultima Online, which was launched in 1997, had a Bard, but it was a very different Bard, and Ultima Online was a very solo focused game, PvP game, PvE game. There's like whole lot there. But that Bard was more about like provoking enemies to attack each other and things like that. Whereas EverQuest Bard had this pulsing song system. So the pulse systems that you saw with healing in the Ashley creation, that's that is what the EverQuest Bard did.
Oh.
Um, Twisting of songs. So there used to be jokes in EverQuest that you know, if you played a bard in EverQuest, you'd get carpal tunnel because EverQuest in general was essentially a very a slower paced game, especially back then. But there was one class that was not, and that class was the bard because you had 8 songs and you could twist between them. And so the best bards would twist multiple songs all together because then you'd stack up all these things that are all these different things. So one of the things I was really found interesting was that Ashes is kind of somewhat going that route, but not,
Sure.
right? So the
With the
idea
song
of
weaving.
yeah. And so I was really like, oh wow. So like currently you can, you know, pick, right? You can pick if you want to be able to weave this song or if you want it to grow in strength as you use it longer. And I thought that was an interesting take because EverQuest eventually went with melodies, which melodies in EverQuest were essentially you picked several songs and it rotated through them. So it kind of did it automatically. It was an interesting look at it because so much of it did feel like that bard, a bard that is a support for everyone around. It seemed like the bard might have a bit more healing than the EverQuest bard did. But also like there's other bards like EverQuest 2 had bards as well, which were just like these buff specialists that made your group incredible just by being around. And so it seems like there's a lot of that pull, but then I know there's other bards too, like DAOC had a bard. Um, Lord of the Rings Online has a bard, and I don't know enough about those to really like form a full opinion on it. So the main thing that I went to was what I knew, which was the EverQuest bard. I think
Sure.
the one like thing that I was really felt different though was the cosmetic instruments
Yeah.
instead of item instruments. I think that was my one complaint, but the animations I think may have made up for it a little bit because those were really cool.
Huh? Your thoughts, else? What do you think about the animations or the instruments not being I guess you would say, equipable weapon,
Yeah.
but rather being a cosmetic thing tied to a skill?
S-
No one?
yeah.
Uh,
So I'm sorry, I'm stuttering right now. So I like that the showcase was with the musical instruments. I thought that that was great. I like that they were just there as a like a placeholder, meaning that you could potentially utilize other weapons as well. Because I mean, oftentimes with a lot of the showcases, they've shown that a lot of the archetypes are tied to one specific weapon, and it makes sense that a bard should be more musically inclined, and if that's what you want to use, that's what you want to use. But it opens up the possibility that you can weave a lot of these skills with, you know, maybe other weapons and other abilities, and it just providing that type of build diversity I think is valuable. I agree with Flynn here. I thought that the bard showcase was fantastic. There was a few things I didn't want to see. I didn't want to see a lot of channeled abilities where you're stuck in the same cast time, just channeling different buffs. I do like the ability to potentially weave different powerful buffs, like, and the ones that they showed was really nice, and that was on a level 10. And they kind of hinted at that as they get to max level, you might be able to weave even more buffs than the 2. And they're like, we're not sure if we're going to do that yet or not, but we might do that. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I every time we have one of these archetype showcases, I think about, okay, like what would I run? How would I run this? And I thought more randomly about the bard than I have any other archetype. Like, okay, what could I do with this? What could I do with this running with Nice in a 2-man group or a 4-man? Like, what?
yeah.
How could I run this like as a frontline bard, like running with tanks and fighters? And you know, maybe I want to be on the back line. How could I do this? And you just see what they have, that mobile slide that they had, the ability, the movement speed that it had. It was just like, God, this thing's going to be mobile. It's like super mobile. It has the ability to sleep. Like it has so many different buff abilities that you can pick and choose. Like you could have all of them if you want, or you can pick and choose the ones that you think are more valuable and then maybe incorporate damage via other skills. It was nice, man. It was nice. So I liked it quite a bit.
So, F-Frame, hope I'm not butchering that too hard. F-Frame Neff says, "The book for the bard in AOC looks dumb."
Oh, I
What's everyone's
like it.
thought on the spell
There's actually
book?
some comments like that on the video too.
Oh, yeah, so I'm wondering, is this a common consensus? Like, everybody in chat, just let me know, like, do you like the look of the spell book being, like, not this book you wield or you open and you have in your hand like this, it's just, like, something just floating around? Arctic says, "Delete the book file and redo it." JV says, "I love the book." Barrel says, "Too big, too far from the caster. Spellbook looks awesome. It actually gives casters weapons readability." Ooh, that's a true take. That's a true take. I actually like the spell book because it makes it look different from other games. The
I
book looks
agree.
great, just need to be a little smaller. Okay, so I think everyone can at least agree that we want it smaller. I think that's something
No.
that a majority of people. Well, you said no?
No, I don't. So
What?
so Albion has the smaller book, has the smaller spell book,
Mhm.
and so I haven't played a ton of Albion, so I've seen the smaller book. I'm not gonna lie, man. Like maybe I'm compensating for something in my real life, and like I need a bigger spell book for it. But I liked the big floating spell book. I thought it was sick. I thought it was different. I thought it was unique. But if you guys rule me out, like I'm not gonna be upset about it. Like I can sit on the island by myself and wish.
So
I'm
I've got this like Ashes specific take on this, right?
okay.
So I thought the book was actually a good showpiece for them to do with the bard, specifically because like so when I was talking about the bard, I was like, oh, instruments. Why aren't they just items? Because I came from EverQuest where you have a drum and that drum that you use increases your movement speed song. And then you have a
Sure.
lute and that lute increases your healing. So like the instrument was essential to the bard. But if you look at the bard skills in Ash of Creation, you've got music, you've got dancing, and then you have basically storytelling, plays and things like that. So I think even like having the book further, like from a class fantasy perspective,
Yeah.
further pushes the bard into this storyteller, like the D&D type storyteller thing. So I like at first I was like that's kind of weird, but then like as I sat with it a little bit longer, especially when you looked into their whole idea of like this WoW rogue style combo point system with the how you stack up, what is it called, uh the tragedy themes, the themes, how
Yeah.
you
Yeah, yeah.
stack those up to launch your saga, and the saga is a book story basically, or a set piece from a play. The book made a lot more sense to me in that concept.
And so like Jamie said here, anyone can use any weapon. So how's that gonna look when the bard is using a wand instead? Like
Yeah.
it just
Sure.
how you doing, Zillan? Welcome on in. I wonder. Okay, first let me give my take. I think a lot of you in chat just made sense, and what I'm gonna try to do is be the compromise guy and bring everybody's opinions together. Book can be a little smaller. Jamie says, "Nah, giant tome is great. Let you know what weapon they have." I think it can still do that, being a little bit smaller because it is huge. I did see, I think, a couple of you say make it come closer. I could be for that. I think it's cool that it's a floating book. It's magical. You can write a lore reason why it's able to happen. I mean, it's a magic spell book, and there's dragons flying around. Let's not read too much into it, right? But um, I like it. I like it. Would I like if I was designing, would I just had went for a simple, non-innovative hold book in one hand?
Sure.
Yeah, I would have. Make it a offhand weapon, you know? Um I have no strong opinion about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I do think it looks cool. One thing I will say is that it does look cool.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah. Viral says Dark Age of Camelot has the same implementation of weapon slash instrument as Ashes. I did not know that.
And
That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Cool, yeah, cool
Jamie, I
here.
knew that they weren't tied to it. I just meant in this, like showing it with the bard made sense
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
terms
I thought so
of
too.
the storyteller, because I think a lot of people will come into the Azure Creation Bard the way that I did. Like, oh no, you're supposed to just play instruments. So I like that we
Yeah.
got to see the dancing and the plays and stuff like that.
See, and that's what I liked thematically about what they did with the Bard is it wasn't just music. I forget the name of the developer that they had on the live stream, but the how he had that music just lie in underneath the main song, like the main theme for Ashes of Creation. I thought that was great. Like I'm sitting there listening to him, like because like I had a few concerns about the bard. Is the music going to be too overpowering and annoying to where when you get in a fight with bards on the other side, is it going to annoy you to hear like trumpets blaring, and is it going to like ruin the gameplay, or is it going to add to it? And I thought they did a good job in that regard. And then like you were saying, the fact that it's more like the book ties in a little bit with the storytelling with the bard was just another addition that you don't really see in many bards across any part of social media, and I thought that was great too.
Yeah. I think like
Earlier,
one of the
Timmy had said, did they show a Mana Region song? They did show a Mana Region song, yes.
things I find really, really fascinating is, so as I'm listening to y'all and I'm looking at chat and things like that, I'm saying
Yeah.
so much of the conversation is around how the bard would be in PvP, the music in PvP. And I'm sitting here thinking like, how is it going to sound in a group? Like having the bard in the
Yeah.
group, and how, like, how is it going to work in a
Yeah.
group with PvE in mind, right? So like, because I approach games with that mindset
Yeah.
of PvE first versus PvP first. So it's especially with the games that I've covered recently, because I'm quite far away from my days in Ultima Online and Shadowbane, right? So the hardcore PvP MMOs that I used to play. So my mindset has shifted so much that I look at it in those terms. So it's really interesting hearing like the thoughts of the, like, I think believe Jamie was saying the book being larger, because then you would know, right? You would know what weapon that is, so you know how to counter that, right? And that's, I'm making an assumption there, but you know how to counter it in PvP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting.
Yeah.
It's go ahead.
I was gonna say that the main reason I said PvP in that regard as well was like when you often encounter PvE environment stuff, like you're gonna have your 10, 12 man, your raid style group, but in PvP it could be 2 raids. And so it could be you and your bards versus other bards. And it's like, okay, now you're gonna have like a symphony of music coming from 2 different points of view. And that's where I was worried about the clashing, the clashing of different buffs going off. And you're like, God, is this gonna be annoying? Because what it reminds me of nice is, you remember the dark convergence noise when everybody was running dark convergence in ESO?
Oh yeah.
I'm sorry, but like there's one set in a game that Nice and that I used to play, that Nice also plays, that made a sound and everybody ran it, and it was after about a month it was so annoying. It was just like you'd hear that noise and you're like, God damn it, man! Like, can I just like, can I turn these sounds off? I don't want to hear this pull sound anymore. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You know what's funny, since you stopped playing else, the new set is a set where the proc of it makes the sound of shattering glass.
Yeah.
And it's so annoying because it's the most popular set in PvP right now. It's just a shattering glass set. And I am afraid that I've played so much of the previous patch of ESO that I'm going to go to a restaurant. The busboy is going to drop a glass on the floor and it's going to shatter. And I'm just going to get into PvP mode. I'm get defensive and just start. I'm going to dodge roll. And I think it may have mentally scarred me. And yeah, a lot of people in chat are having debates, angry debates about size preference. And you guys, it's not the size of the book. It's the context of the chapters. It's the words, Flynn here is an author. He will tell you. Flynn, how big is your book?
Wow. This is the first time we had him on and you're already asking about his book size?
Is this like a theme of like the Ashes of Creation streams?
We're good people. All right, so here I got a couple of things I want to get into here. So let's get into. Jamie says I have a massive book. Simon says he hears it's pretty girthy. So is this game out and playable now? Soon, TM. October is when it will be playable for its Alpha 2. So you've been following Ashes of Creation, I think, since like back in APOC, if I recall correctly. Dark times. So just as a preview to everybody here that's listening, I got a video coming out this week, and I should have included APOC in it, but I intentionally just never bring up APOC. Like I have suppressed it out of my mind. Like, nope, never happened. I don't know what you're talking about. Show me the proof. But no,
I played it.
I'm sorry to hear that, man. No, I played it. It didn't look bad. It was just like it was more of a "why did it happen" kinda thing, but it kinda makes sense, the way they explained it, with, it being just a test environment essentially.
It's I think it's at this point now, it kind of feels like it's a rite of passage for Kickstarter MMOs that they need to make a mistake with some kind of test mode or alternate game that really pisses people off. I just think like it's just what they have to do at some
Yeah.
point. I just did it pretty early and it's and has moved past it, so there's that.
Got it out the way.
Yeah.
So, my super crazy pressuring question is, as someone that follows Ashes of Creation, but maybe not as crazy close as, like, maybe some of us would, but still close, obviously. What would you say is your biggest concern about Ashes of Creation as you have looked into it and as you get ready to play it, come Alpha 2?
My biggest concern, and I like it's not a concern for me as much as viability, and it's one that y'all have heard ad nauseum, and it's all to do with the focus on um PvP basically not having a toggle, right? Always on PvP. Because what I've always been concerned about is okay, so you have these corruption system, which is basically like an extension of what Ultima Online did with their corruption system, or I believe Archage. Like, there's a lot of games that have done similar systems, but then it's going to be very intense in Ashes of Creation, and so then my question was always if it gets if it's to the point where it's intense enough to stop, say, basically someone just going around and just spoiling the fun of newbies just for the fun of spoiling the fun of newbies, then where's the line where it remains fun to
Yeah.
have the open PvP system for the people that want the open PvP system? Like, where is that balance? And I always feel like that balance is like a very small sliver, and it's going to be really difficult to dial in. And then you have to dial that in on top of balancing both PvE and PvP combat. So my
Mhm.
concerns are all about the same concerns I'd have for any MMO, because that's a lot to balance, and it's not going to be an easy thing.
Sure.
Yeah, Viral said something here, bait and combatant status. Yeah, so in my opinion, Ashes of Creation, and this is just us all obviously theorizing about a game we haven't really technically
Yeah.
played yet. Just looking at the systems, their plans, what they've said, what they have laid out for us thus far. I personally feel like there's so much PvP in the game, and this PvX, I gotta use that term or Steven like sends me an angry DM. This PvX MMO, there's so much opportunities to find that PvP, get that PvP fixed. A majority of the freaking map is open seas, and that's the whole open seas is a PvP zone. Like
Yeah.
you don't consent there. That's a flagged PvP zone. You got your caravans run, which act as a mobile PvP objective. You're gonna have dueling. You're gonna have, I think, instance battlegrounds. So I predict, or I would hope, at least for a player like me, going corrupted will be. I want it to be rare. I want it to be punishing. I want it to feel personal when it does happen. And with that being said, when it comes to balancing or finding that PvP, like you were talking about, like what happened, like this group, let's say these 5 or so people here on screen, they don't know each other, just chilling out in open world. You approach this group, you hit one of them, like he's not hitting back, but you want to fight, like, hey, I'm out here. I don't want you guys here at this grind spot. Fight back. If they don't fight back, and you kill them, you become corrupted. If they
Mm.
do fight back, well, now you got your, open world PvP, and there's, like, not really a negative there. How often will that actually happen where groups just flag against each other, or will people be like, "Nope, I'm not gonna fight?" Now,
Sure.
obviously, how that is on launch is gonna be different than long term, because I think at launch, maybe some people will opt to not fight back, but then you lose more, and so it's gonna be this give and take. I think it's gonna take players learning for that system to actually come into play. I imagine launch or maybe throughout testing, it's just like a learning curve. Like, are they going to need to dial up corruption? Do they need to dial it back? Like, I kill one guy, and am I out there grinding for 4 hours for that one kill? Is that justifiable? Is that how punishing you want corruption to be? Or do you need to kind of tone it back? Because if you don't, then there's really not going to be any PKs at all. And you kind of want some PKs to kind of invite conflict. Or do you? I don't know. Like, it's gonna be a tough thing, like you said, to balance because where is that happy medium with so many systems, especially with, like you said, PvE being a factor?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my stance on this is from a broader sense. I've played, MMORPGs that have specific zones where it's PvP only. So outside of that, it's only PvE. Played New World toggle off, toggle on system, and then I've played games like this with a corruption system where you can potentially you do bad things and bad things happen to you, can potentially happen to you because of what happens. And I agree with Flynn here that this is the system that needs to be the most dialed in. It can be so extremely strict that it'll be never used and it's essentially the same as like a PvE server and nobody's ever engaging with the system. And if the system isn't being engaged with, does it really exist, right? Like it could be so strict that nobody ever does it, or it could be so loose and lenient that everybody's doing it all the time and you're literally pushing players out of the game, that new players that are jumping in for the first time, they're trying to experience things, and you just literally have players hopping in, PKing them over and over and over again because the punishments aren't high enough. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with any of the systems that exist. Like I think if you do this right, I think it can be better, but you have to have your thumb on the pulse of what the game is and where it's at in order to do it correctly, because this is the one that can most go poorly. I remember like when we had this PvE server debate from like 2 years ago. I was watching an Asmongold stream and he was talking about how oftentimes, like on World of Warcraft, the biggest disputes they would have would be on on the PvE side, because things couldn't get resolved. They'd be grinding mobs or they'd be grinding for a specific thing, and people would come in and they would steal pulls or they would just be assholes, and you could report them, but then you're relying on the game to police the issue that's happening where somebody's like taking away your time. In this type of game with this type of freedom with the corruption system, if somebody's doing something like that, you could potentially take matters into your own hands if things are dialed in properly. And so I've had the same experience where I've been grinding or leveling in an area and other people join in and I'm like, all right, cool, like not a big deal. And then you have other people coming in trying to steal pulls, talking shit the whole time. You're like, dude, we're just here leveling up. Like I don't know why
Yeah.
you got to be this way, but I mean, it's a video game, so do what you got to do, right? And so that I completely agree with Flynn. Like this is going to be the thing that either keeps people in or pushes them away. And I 100% agree. And so it's the thing one of the systems I'm most excited to test in Alpha 2, just see like how strict the punishment is, because I don't like seeing new players get bullied. I don't think that's PvP at all. And I'm a PvPer. So I don't view abusing new players as a viable form of PvP.
Yeah, there's no sense of accomplishment or challenge in that.
Yeah, well, even if you're considering it, like looking at it from like there's like the side of it, like, oh well, that sucks for that person, right? And you
Yeah.
want people to enjoy the game, but beyond that, the reason why a lot, like at least in my opinion, a lot of PvP games fail is because you get to a point where you get so top heavy that you basically have the top heavy side of PvP basically kicking people out of the game. Because if you start a game that's very PvP heavy, you go out and you brand new to the game and then you get ganked. Why would I keep playing that game? Some people will keep trying, but Shadowbane is a really good example, I think, because Shadowbane was a PvP always type game, and it got to be a very top heavy. It had player cities, had guild versus guild, everything. But what happened eventually was servers would become dominated by one or two guilds, and that was it. Because they just pushed everyone else out of the server, and then the server would die. Because then the people that were at the top would get bored. There's no one to fight.
Yep.
It's why Ultima Online added the Tremel and Felucia thing, where Ultima Online used to be always on PvP. You were safe in cities, and that was it. And eventually what would happen, and they've talked about it, is new players stopped playing. Because players that were there from the beginning had all the gear, they had all the skills, they knew where to go. They would wait for new players. New players would go outside of the city. They'd kill the new players. The new players would no longer play. So it becomes this thing, but it's not just PvP. It was an issue in EverQuest 2 with PvE. Because I know like a lot of people like talk about WoW, right? But the thing with WoW with PvE, you can't train people very well in WoW, right? It's not the same way where you can just grab 100 mobs like you could in EverQuest and then train them on a raid and kill the raid. Because that's what would happen when you had contested things. You had a contested raid dragon or something like that. One guild would be in position, getting ready. It takes a long time to get ready. Another guild would come in, train the entire zone on that raid, kill the raid, go kill the raid boss, and leave. And
Sure.
so like there was still like it comes into this might makes right kind of thing, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and I don't know that there is a good answer to it. Like there's the completely like fair answer of like everyone gets, like the way WoW has gone, where everyone gets their own loot, everyone gets their own mobs, everyone gets their own credit. Basically everyone gets everything, but then there's downsides to that, right? Because then
Oh
there's no
yeah.
sense of accomplishment, there's no sense of achievement, there's no sense of competition,
Yep.
Yep.
which are also very good for stickiness of an MMO. So
Yep.
I don't know the right answer, but
And
there
everything you
are
just said.
examples.
Yeah, everything you just said, that's what Steven's like pulling for, like the rewards being finite, having a sense of reward. Everybody doesn't get a trophy, all that good stuff we've heard hundreds of times. And that's why it's really good that he's kind of doing the opposite of all that. Um,
Yeah.
you said something about large guilds and the players PKing people in Ultima Online. That kind of reminded me when you said that no one here actually just posted a video about the pirate software. I don't know if you saw that video about he did a recent video about Ashes of Creation and his guild plans for Ashes of Creation. And pretty much he was talking about like a 15,000 or a 12,000 player guild, whichever it was. When how do I say this? In MMOs of the past, have you more strayed towards a large guild, or do you like to have a small guild where you like to play with everyone? Because I think most of us agree, like if you're in a guild so huge that you're dominating the server and there's not any competition at all,
Mhm.
it's not essentially that fun. And so, what do you typically like? Who are you, a solo player? Or do you like you got a select group of friends, or what's your go-to game loop?
So for me personally, it really, really depends on the game, right? So like in WoW, there were benefits of just being in a guild, and the more people in the guild, the better. So you got like bonus experience, like there's just all these bonuses. Same with EverQuest 2, which both those games happen to come out at the same time. A larger guild resulted in more bonuses for you as a player, whether you did things with the guild or not. So it just made sense to be in large guilds.
Sure.
PvP, there's added incentive for being in a bigger guild. One of my biggest concerns for Throne and Liberty is that it's going to be dominated by big PvP guilds, and it's pay to win on top of that. So
Mhm.
you've got like basically the entire top section of the game will be dominated by one or two guilds, like what ended up happening in Shadowbane.
Sure.
So those are the concerns with those huge guilds of this complete and utter domination of a server, both for the people in the guilds and without. But for me, like I tended to gravitate towards smaller, like more casual guilds in PvE games. But I had like a 4 or 5 year period where I just raided in EverQuest, so PvE, and so that was a fairly large guild, mostly just so we could field raid content because EverQuest raids were anywhere from 50 players to 72 players per raid.
Holy
Yeah,
crap!
it used to be uncapped, but then they eventually added a raid tool that was capped at 72, and then later on dropped it down to 50, 54, I think, something like that.
Sure.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. I and someone else in chat had something I want to quickly touch on as far as corruption. They said corruption is going to be so corruption is corruption, but if there's a level disparity between the person that you PK, so if you're max level, let's say 50 and you kill a level 10, like that corruption is going to hit different if you know compared to if you were a level 50 killed a level 49 or a level 50. I agree in that if you kill a low level, like a green, someone that never even fought you back, like yeah, that PK penalty should be tough because you don't want that example like Flynn gave earlier, where people are in Ultima Online, and it's I mean essentially maybe as soon as they step out the city, they're getting PK'd by someone that was
was
you
full
know,
loot too.
yeah. And full loot. Oh gosh.
Excellent.
Guardy, thank you for the
Excellent.
donation. He says, how much will brain rot affect the game in your opinion? How much meme will affect the game? Um that's a broad question, as far as what you mean by that. I don't think it'll be that bad. I think we'll be fine for the most part. I think we'll be fine. Thank you so much for the donation. I think Ashes will be fine because you know what? We're gonna have a long testing period, okay? We're gonna have a
Yep.
long testing period, and I think a lot of these kinks will get ironed out. We have more than enough time to get that ironed out. Oh, speaking of which, random tangent of a tangent of a tangent. I did a Reddit poll on Ashes of Creation. You guys may have saw me actually type that Reddit poll up live during one of our streams. And yeah, I did a poll on what was it? How long Alpha 2 will last? Like, how long are we going to be in Alpha 2 until launch? And not really surprisingly, but the category of 1 to 2 years won. Second place was 2 to 3 years. And then third place, it skipped the 4 to 5. It was 5 to 6 years plus. So it's a little bit all over the
Just
place.
doomers. Just doomers.
Yeah,
That's funny.
5 to 6 years was actually third place, with 1 to 2 being the most, 2 to 3 being right in the middle. So yeah, that was interesting. I don't know if you guys saw that poll. I think it got like 1,400 to 1,500 votes.
Yeah. So really,
I'd be
really.
scared to do that poll on Pantheon, to be honest.
Ooh.
Oh, that'd be funny. Oh, now you have to
When
do
do
it.
we think
Now you have to do it
Summoner
because
and
I gotta
Rogue?
see it.
See
Yeah,
which
Fled,
one has more
Fled,
powers.
You kind
I'm
of
actually actually that
you
sounds
should do
like
it right
fun.
now.
Yeah,
You should do it
yeah,
right now
do
on live
that.
stream.
And then compare it to my polls side by side. I think that would be cool.
Yeah. So really quick to go back to your previous tangent because I think this is a good discussion to have. I think we also need to bring up some of the things that Ashes of Creation is doing to combat some of the issues other games have had. I think we'd be missing the mark a little bit just to bring up fears and not say, hey, like there's not saying they will solve it, but they're at least working towards potentially solving it. I think. And Flynn, you're the perfect person to have on here for this because you can back check us and say, hey, no, you're wrong. You're actually an idiot for believing this, or you can say we're right and pat our egos a little bit. So one of the things that I think Ashes does really well in this regard is other MMOs that I've played in the past, players that'll start out on a server, they grind 20, 30, 40, 100 hours really, really quickly. They get to max level, they corner the market in one specific way, and they basically just stay in charge for forever. They get their hand on specific areas for gold, whatever, and basically it doesn't matter what they do afterwards. They can coast and they have everything, right? They have the ability to buy everything and they just succeed. Where Ashes is different is there's really no chance to coast. Like you can't coast in the exact same way. And so because of that, if you start to coast or if your node starts to stagnate, it will drop a level. Or people will come in and they'll see you weaker and they can actually destroy your node and take you out. And so a lot of your progress can get wiped out in that regard. And so I think that's a cool aspect of one of the things that they're doing just to kind of prevent those people on top. You were talking about top heavy MMOs. And I think this is part of the solution to that. The other solution as well is I think the corruption system is going to be very harsh. Like Nice hinted at before, we have always on C PvP, we have caravan system, we have node wars, we have guild wars, we have node sieges. There's all these things that exist, and I just can't imagine a situation where killing somebody won't yield high corruption that you have to work off, because it's like, we gave you all these other things. You could PvP everywhere else. You could do all this other stuff. If you're gonna do this, you better have a good reason. And so I'm not saying it will be that way, but like that's just kind of how I'm viewing it or hoping how it's going to work out.
Hoping it's something personal when it does happen. Like it should feel like you got murdered. Like when you get killed, when you get PK'd in Ashes, it should be like, what the hell did I do to that guy? Like,
yeah,
like you said something about my mama on Reddit. Like, oh, okay, yeah, I deserve that. Like, it needs to be like a backstory to a PK. How you doing, AV? Welcome on in.
So I think like one of the things that I think a majority of people may agree on is not liking like low level player ganking, right? Basically, just
Yes.
like a high level, just going in and destroying someone because
Mhm.
they kind of want to be a dick. And the one thing that, and the thing is with corruption, there's going to be a bigger penalty from that, as from my understanding. But the penalties, there's only one that I can see actually having an impact. And the one that I see having impact, like stopping, because I believe Sawman said earlier about like guilds having designated people to get corruption and things like that. The one thing I think that could be a devastating thing is reduced combat ability. Because functionally, what that does, it's a hard cap. Everything else can be managed in different ways. But if you reduce the ability of someone to an extent where they're unable to function, unable to keep doing the behavior just by repeatedly doing the negative behavior, that's a hard cap that will actually functionally work.
Sure.
But it has to, but the my concern is, does it do enough, right? So if it
Mm.
does it take you down to a point where then you just go, okay, well, I'm at this lowest point, I'm maxed out on corruption, but I can still kill level 10s. You know, like
Interesting. Yeah.
how much is it going to reduce your ability to do things to the point? Because obviously, then okay, it's just gonna, if it's just ganking, well, then maybe it's easier just to keep ganking anyway. You know.
Sure.
I think Mr. No One here is gonna test that for us. Ain't that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
He's gonna
will.
do a stream where he just goes max corrupted and try to make sure it's working.
Yeah, I plan on testing because this is one of my big concerns as well. Is I obviously like PvP. I think PvP can be a lot of fun. I think it'd be a lot of fun to engage in for players of different skill levels. There are certain forms of PvP that are not enjoyable, and it's not fun at all. And you know, when you're a low level starting out, yeah, occasionally you're gonna get killed, but stopping the constant killing over and over and over again to where it's literally ruining your enjoyment in a game, that's one of those things that's a no for me from a PvP perspective. Like yeah,
Yeah.
sure, yeah, you might be out here farming for a while, you may have been out there for hours, maybe I knock on the door and you know, kind of see what's in your pockets real quick, but then I leave you alone and I'm just like, hey man, sorry about that, like sorry, I don't know, maybe you were out here for a while. But the people that just think it's funny, like, hey, I'm ruining this guy's day, he's getting so mad at me, he's yelling at me, he thinks that, like, fuck you man, that's messed up. Like at
Yeah.
some point you're crossing a line, and so I hope that that's not a thing.
Nick earlier had asked, when do we think Summoner and Rogue are going to be released? My guess is
Ooh.
we will not see them this year. I'm guessing Q1 2025. That's going to be my guess. And maybe
Okay.
we get some things ironed out in this upcoming AMA that happens here on the 16th. But yeah, I'm hoping that you kill a low level. Like, let's say each time you kill someone, or each time you PK someone, there's 5 tiers. So you kill one person, that's a tier. When you kill someone that's a low level, like super low level from you, that should already bump you down to 3 tiers. So now you're at tier 4 of like stat dampening. Like I think it should be something like that. And that tier 5, like Flynn was just worried about, like, can you still kill level 10 at that? I want it to be like, just give up. Like put the weapon, sheath the weapons. Like you can't. You're
Drop
just
your
not
loot,
effective.
drop the
Yeah.
loot
I
you're
hope
supposed to
that
drop.
bounty hunter system is good. Like I
Or
really,
level 10 can kill that person. Then you get, then you know, then they get the benefit, right?
Yeah.
Of being
yes,
attacked by the person trying to gank them, and they have a legitimate chance, and they can actually engage in equal PvP against someone who is expecting easy PvP.
Yep.
mm. Something cool. Somebody brought it up in chat earlier, just to kind of piggyback off of that. Like something that's really cool is once someone is corrupted, like you don't even flag when you attack them. Like you could technically stay a green, so
Yep.
you're still like an innocent party. And the cool thing about that is greens cannot be CC'd. Like,
It can't be
and
rooted or
that's just like
snared.
the,
Yeah.
and I don't want to use the term unfair because it is fair because you're corrupted, you kind of deserve it, right? But it's hilariously unfair for you to fight that battle with your dampening stats, you can't CC the person off of you. Like going corrupted is gonna be, oh, by the way, and the XP debt you gotta work off. Yeah. There it sounds on paper, we gotta always emphasize that that it's gonna be something. But obviously this is all looking balanced and penalizing without us knowing the numbers or
Uh,
knowing the amount of time we're gonna have to grind something off. But yeah, I digress.
nice Nice. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Arctic activated the change my mind card.
Oh.
So, for those of you guys that don't know, because it hasn't been used in a while, if you use the change my mind on Twitch, what that means is whatever opinion one of us has, we have to flip and then take the exact opposite opinion that we believe in and argue that as well as possible. So now I am full corruption. I am full for auto PKing all the time. You guys got to get good, man. Like, how long have you been level 5s? Like hours, days? How often are you going to be farmed? Like, at some point, you need to stop being a farm and become a player. Okay, and so the entire situation here can be solved with learn to play. Okay, and so get good, learn to play, quit complaining.
Everybody in chat boo this man. This guy is pro PK. He wants to remove corruption from the game. He just wants full loot, open world PvP. Look, some people in chat are agreeing with you. Some people are
I want the
agreeing.
younglings, man. Give me the younglings. I'm gonna wipe them all out. So
That's
As
actually
soon as they
really
come out the
good.
gates,
That's a
gotta
really
break them
good
Yeah.
one.
in.
Yeah.
where are these big PvP kills that are gonna be level 5? I'm gonna take you all out at the same time. I want all of the smoke until you get to my level, and then we're cool. Okay, and then we're cool. Let me kill the low levels.
Oh man. A level 5, okay, else a level 10, you know, because you got standards. A level 10, just they're doing their first caravan. They went and harvested this low tier wood from the forest because it's all that they can acquire because they haven't raised up their professions. They're new. They see you going by and they say, "Hey, Mr. No One, can you please help me escort this caravan?" You finish the quest. What happens next?
I say, sure. How much gold do you have? And if they don't have enough that's to my liking, then I take what I need and I walk away. And I say, hey, next time, don't draw attention to yourself from somebody of my stature. And I go about my day.
So can we get this guy AOC canceled? Ashes have canceled right now. Can we get the movement started?
Guys, this is a PvP game, okay? Like, I'm just engaging in PvP. How is this a bad thing? So I'm the bad guy for wanting to fight people? Oh my gosh. Unbelievable.
SMH.
Oh my
Varney
gosh.
says, "Did I hear XP debt? EverQuest death penalties for the win. How was EverQuest death penalties, or how do games with death
Oh.
penalties feel? Like outside of like a corruption system, just PVE? Because that's something I emphasized it in one video before, but I think that's something a lot of people like seem to forget is that you're going to get death penalties for just failing at a raid, which essentially may end up making you worse for the next attempt, or like if you have gear degradation and whatnot. What is your opinion on death penalties in MMOs? Do you feel like it's too much? Do you feel like it could be done right, or what?
So I mean, I come from my first MMO was Ultima Online, where your death penalty was you died, whether it was PvP or PvE. If it was PvP, someone looted all your stuff, you turned into a ghost. If it was PvE, the NPC would actually loot one item from you. You still turn into a ghost. You had to go and run and find a wandering healer or something else to res yourself, and then go run back and find your corpse, which is probably already looted. Panic is basically the thing that came with that. You don't lose any skills or anything like that. It was just like you lost your gear and you lost a lot of time trying to res. And then EverQuest, you lost a lot of time. And there was panic. There was a whole huge risk versus reward. You could actually de-level in EverQuest. You lost like 10% of your experience when you died. You could get it back sometimes if a cleric resed you, but never all of it back. You'd always lose some. And then you have games like WoW where you lose a little bit of durability on your weapons and have to fly back to your corpse. So I think like there's a happy medium because a death penalty, what it does is it makes every decision you make in an MMORPG more impactful. So like in what Ashes, it's always talking about how the PvP part of it is what makes things impactful because you're considering things. The world isn't safe. Death penalties do that too, and they make you worried about going into a cave because if you die in that cave, you may lose 10% of your experience. And
Yeah.
EverQuest had
Sure.
corpse runs and stuff too, so you could actually lose your gear.
I
But I think
XP
there's a
debt makes
balance.
you care.
I just want to
Yeah.
briefly say, having an NPC take one piece of gear off you has to be some of the most trolly shit I've ever heard. Like,
And
imagine,
you
like,
saw it.
oh my god, getting
Oh,
looted
It
by
had a
a
little loot
bot.
message. It had a
Oh my
little loot
god, that is
message
so
that said,
annoying.
like, a Lich Lord loots your silver halberd of might. And like
like run that shit.
You just took my sword? Are you serious? Oh my
yeah.
god! Like, I play Elden
Although
Ring, I'd be so mad. I'd be so mad.
Oh
look,
man.
if you killed it, you got it back because you could loot it from it again. But more often than not, you would find something that had like it has like all this like this NPC that all this loot and like what the hell? Why does it have all these things in it? Probably because it killed a bunch of players.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that. That's the most like trolly thing, and that's what these kind of things are meant to do. Like make those deaths mean something. Like I've seen a lot of comments from people like they don't like it. They don't they don't want to be punished for losing because they're trying to get better. But I mean, bring more people next time. Get good. I hate to say it. Like this guy over here keeps saying to the poor level fives, but like, I think it adds more meaning. It means so much, like and I know Else will agree with me on this, like, there is some bosses, like, in not an MMO, but still, like, there's some bosses in Elden Ring or any Souls game where you just gonna beat your head against the monitor, you wanna throw your controller or whatever, and you just keep failing at it, like, "Who the heck put this BS in the game?
Yeah.
It's impossible. What the heck is these mechanics? Blah, blah, blah." But eventually, you try harder, you get good, or heck, maybe you just get lucky, and you eventually overcome that obstacle, and man, does it feel so much better because it was challenging, because you went through a lot, and that's something I haven't gotten from a lot of PvE and a lot of games, and so that's something I'm looking forward to. Like, my favorite MMO, I hate to say it, but I do not like, not that the PvE in ESO is bad, they have their difficult content, but some content that's, like, my favorite is overland content or your open world content. Like, I love that's all I do in Guild Wars 2 is just the open world content, open world quests and world events, whatever. ESO, the overland content is so you can turn your brain off, and the add difficulty, the mobs difficulty is just so, like,
Yeah.
are you a real thing? Or I feel insulted as a player sometimes. Like, I hate this that's the best way I can put it, is that I feel insulted as a player sometimes. Like, okay, you could have made him attack more frequently than a light attack every 3 seconds, right? Like, I would like some mechanics, make me have to actually block or heal at some point, something. And so, I'm hoping we have that difficult PvE open world in Ashes, but I'm also wanting to see like, hey, if those things are difficult enough and I do fail, I'm willing to pay for it. I want to learn my lesson. I want to feel like I need to go find a friend and come help me take this thing out next time. So yeah.
I think it's so I don't know if you'll know, but what my most disliked video on my channel is a review I did of Elder Scrolls Online. Mostly because I said I hated one Tamriel and thought that it robbed the game of achievement in a lot of ways.
It did.
But
No.
one of the other things that I had that I feel with a lot of modern MMOs, and it's more like on the PvE side of things, and I've kind of referred to it as like the ARPGification of an MMO. So playing WoW in 2024 feels more like playing Diablo, whereas in 2004 it felt more like playing um, an actual game with a little bit more challenge. I mean, to people that are playing EverQuest, it felt easy, but that's just a sliding scale, right? Easy to someone is hard to someone else, and that's
Sure.
totally valid.
Yep.
But now it's more like when I say ARPGification, it's individual NPCs don't
Mhm.
have threat. The threat comes from multiple NPCs, maybe. So your whole idea is I'm just going to go destroy all these things,
Yep.
grind this stuff, whatever. Same, it feels like Diablo, which there's a whole like thing there of like Diablo. A lot of people play it. ARPGs play it because it's a power fantasy. If I can destroy all these things all at once, it's
Yeah.
really cool. And
Taking out whole
it has its
armies.
place. Yeah, it has its place. But I feel like every MMO has gone that way for a while now. All the newer MMOs anyway.
Yeah.
So where it just becomes mindless. So I think there's a lot of people look at PvE in those terms
Sure.
of it's just boring. Why would I want to engage with it? It barely even fights back. And I'm hoping that Ashes of Creation spends as much time on the PvE, which it kind of seems like they are, like making the PvE itself, individual combat with PvE mobs, worth doing, worth the challenge, and feeling a sense
Yes.
of accomplishment because I
Yes.
killed this dragon, I killed this minotaur, whatever. Because that's an important part. Because like Shadowbane had none of that, right? Shadowbane had stuff you just like killed with no thought to it. It
Yep.
was just there to collect loot. So all of
Yep.
it became PvP. And I think that itself naturally balances out a lot of it. If the PvE is good and the PvP is good, it balances out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I do think that's part of the issue that MMORPGs have is like you have massively multiplayer in the name, but the open world system is so easy that players will get by with less. So it's like, okay, instead of coordinating to get 10 people here when we only need 4, why don't we just get 4 and get it taken care of? And so you lose a lot of the social aspect because frankly, you don't need the social aspect to do the vast majority of content. And so you see a lot of games kind of leaning into this. And so it's one of those things over time where players have gone smaller and smaller, and it's like you see on ESO, play this dungeon solo, 4-man content, complete this content solo, do it by yourself. And it's like it's at some point the difficulty needs to be high enough to where you can't do it solo. And if you can't do that, if you can't beat it by yourself, then you're not going to mindlessly run through it with 4 people. You're going to have to actually talk with people, and you bring that community kind of back. I think that MMORPGs are often lacking lately.
Agreed.
Yeah. It's a solo player's paradise right now with most MMOs. It really is. It really is. It's gonna be different in Ashes of Creation. Like I always point back to the commission stream, but like just any encounter. I mean, you see these guys right here. I think they were in a 5 or was it a 6-man? It might have been a 6-man during this Bard showcase, and they spent a decent amount of time uh on each little pool or whatever. Previous streams you can look at, the pools took a decent amount of time. And that itself does not lean towards the solo player, and that's something a lot of players are gonna be caught off guard with.
Mhm.
Maybe you can handle a pack of 3 once you get a high enough level, or maybe you out-level them enough, but
Yeah.
I like the combat and the difficulty I've seen thus far. I would like to see a little bit more, I didn't notice this until Viral pointed it out, because I like the when I say difficulty or, yep, as I say it, Viral types, when I say, difficulty, I like how long it's taking them to take out these packs of mobs,
Yep.
you know,
Yeah.
the PvE TTK, if you will.
Yep.
But I didn't notice it until Viral pointed out, but, like, the mobs themselves don't always look super pressuring. It's more of, like, them just being health sponges, and that's why the fight's taking a long time. So, that could be something, I don't wanna really put that out there, like, as a concrete thing until I get my hands on the game, until I test, but from looking at it, I'm liking kinda what I see so far, as far as how long it's taking these guys to kill them. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, and we
They-
had a good discussion in shameless plug here, but in our Voices of Verra Discord, we had a pretty good discussion earlier this week, nice about mob difficulty. And the point is you don't want to make all of your mobs essentially cushions, like damage cushions, to where you're just
Yeah.
endlessly wailing on them. And it's like, okay, time to kill is 5 minutes, but it's the most boring 5 minutes you could imagine. Like,
Yes.
and so it's one of those. It's like, it's tough to quantify. You know it when you play it. Like a fight can be
Mhm.
fun and it can last 30 seconds, right? Because the thing can potentially 2-shot you, but it also has a decent amount of health to where like there's enough defensive and offensive mechanics to where it's fun. And so it was a fun conversation we were having, just talking overall what you were talking about with overall time to kill for these mobs.
Yeah.
Dialing in time to kill, I think, is really an important thing. And it's like, I think like a lot of the frustration a lot of us have in the MMO genre right now isn't necessarily that there are these MMOs that are very solo focused. It's
Yep.
that they're all very solo focused, right? So we were talking earlier about like
Mhm.
the how there's space for different types of MMO. And I think it's the
Yeah.
same thing with PvP MMOs. And why, like, when I look at Ashes, I don't want them to change their PvP, even though I'm a PvE guy, because there's not really options. There's
Yep.
not a whole lot of options out there for players that want a PvP MMO.
Yep.
So for me, the MMO that I want to play for PvE purposes is Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. That's what I want to go play.
Yeah.
But I want someone else to go have Ashes of Creation to go play because they want that PvP. But I also want them to get to have the other parts of the game, which, like, my favorite stream that I've seen had nothing to do with PvP. It was the what is it called?
The
Story
story
arcs?
arcs. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the
I
tower
love
carving.
that story arc scene was so freaking cool. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. You know, so I just like I want to, like, I want the genre to grow and grow by kind of going back in some ways. Look at some of the
Man.
things that made MMOs sticky. Why do people still play Ultima Online right now? Why
Yes.
do people still play EverQuest right now? Those games are both over 2 decades old. EverQuest and Ultima Online, I don't know what Ultima Online's number, but EverQuest has a higher player number than Lost Ark or New World for a reason.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, it's about 80K.
Sheesh. You
Yeah.
said some powerful stuff there, man. Like,
Yeah.
I wish more people had your mentality. Sometimes there's a situation where, one person believes they're right, one person believes they're wrong. That mentality you just presented, I think, was undeniably the mentality more people need to have. And I know that sounds like, oh, well, of course, I have bias. I'm putting myself on a pedestal. But what I mean by that mentality, the mentality I'm referring to is you said that there is those PvE MMOs out there. There is this for everybody. There's not a good modern PvP focused MMO. And so while that's not your focus, while that's not your thing, you want to see it in the genre because there's a MMO for everybody and there needs to be an MMO for everybody.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that a lot of players need, or a lot of people need to adapt their mindset to. And it's
Yeah.
not don't change your preference. Don't change your ideals, but try to understand, like, when you try to take at least without reasoning, when you try to take away PvP aspects or certain systems away from Ashes of Creation, it's like, well, what are you trying to change it into?
Yeah.
Are you trying to change it into World of Warcraft that you've had for 2 decades and can still go play? Like, what is the goal? Why are you trying to give us what we already have and am already complaining about? We have that already.
Yeah.
It's like your parent. You want to stop by McDonald's when you were a kid and you didn't have a job, and you're like, "Mom, can we stop at McDonald's? We got McDonald's at home," and she'll just whip you up some random burger out the freezer. That you got World of Warcraft at home. But yeah,
Yeah. No, I
Yep.
completely agree with you, Nice. And it's funny because we had a similar discussion to exactly what you just said last week, Flint. What you just said, we had the same discussion last week. And my stance, I was just, you get annoyed with people. They're like, this game needs to be like this. It needs to be like this. And it's like, why do I want a bastardized version of another game that's struggling right now? Like when has a secondary lesser version of a game that's not doing very well ever done like great and wonderful? And so my stance that I made at the time was, I think the vast majority of MMORPG players, or just gamers in general, we know what we like, but frankly, there is so much out there that we might like if we tried. And the example that I brought up was Baldur's Gate 3. And I know it won Game of the Year and this is cherry picking, but it's important to highlight exactly where it was coming from, because right now hindsight's 2020. Like, of course Baldur's Gate was amazing, but when you look at the genre that it was in, the previous game before that, it had a maximum player capacity of about 4,000 players a day on Steam charts. And so that was like the entire genre for like tabletop ARPGs, like the way Baldur's Gate is. And Baldur's Gate just came out and they're like, yeah, we don't care that there's no genre for this freaking game. We're going to make this game for our player base, and we're going to do this, and we're going to make the best possible game. And immediately out of the gate, it got 900,000 players. It's still, I looked at it last week, it still has 75 to 80,000 players playing right now 1 year later. The retention has been incredible. And so when you look at like, when people bring up like, oh, this won't work for this genre because of this, this, and this reason. It's like, okay, well, this isn't true. I mean, it just because it hasn't worked in the past doesn't mean that a new game can't come in and do something in a better way to make people realize, like, hey, I actually do like this. And for me, I hadn't played a turn-based game in like 10 years. And I played Baldur's Gate and I was like, I don't care that this game's turn-based because the storyline is freaking epic. And that's what pulled me in. And that's what I enjoyed about it. And so what I would say about a lot of games in the MMO space is, yeah, you may be a PvE only guy or a PvP only guy, but it doesn't mean that a game doing something specifically very well might not pull you into that specific game for that specific reason.
I think like
Real.
that's a great point. I think with like just to add to that, right? Like, so you have the one. I think one of the best things about Baldur's Gate 3, which like became my favorite game ever, favorite single player game ever. I can't put them in the same bucket. They're just different. But you have Baldur's Gate 3, and so players that love and enjoy that, they can go play Baldur's Gate 3. But then you also have, for people that don't like Baldur's Gate 3, they can go play Horizon Zero Dawn. They can go play God of War. They have the options, right? They have the options to do whichever they want to do. Or maybe they want to play Valorant or Halo Infinite or something like that. Those options all exist. Whereas right now the MMO genre just feels so homogenized that you can't. And so I think that's also where a lot of people get worried, in part because there's all these, an MMO really needs players to succeed. Yeah. And so there's this fear of, well, if they don't have 2 million players like WoW, it's going to fail. And as someone who lived through the dark times of Warhammer Online coming out and seeing it die once it had 800,000 players, and it still died, Age of Conan dying with 800k players because they were, they had some staying power, but they had issues, but then players just left, and then the game companies completely abandoned them in very short order. And so there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear, angst in general. I mean, what you have, New World had almost 1 million players, and it's not exactly great at the moment.
It's a game still. It's a game.
It's still out there.
Their PR department could use a little work.
Oh man, understatement.
But I think there's fear that goes into a lot of like, well, okay, but if Ashes does this PvP, it's gonna fail, because we've seen so many MMOs fail. Yes. And MMOs, in a lot of ways, form these connections with people. People still talk about WildStar, and they wish they had WildStar. And so that they worry that the games that they form connections to are going to die because not enough players will like them. So there's a whole lot of fear that goes into trying to mold the game into what they think.
Yep, that's a great point.
Will be successful.
Yeah. Great point.
Yes. I'm just laughing right now. On screen, you see that. You remember that moment where Steven was running away with like 1% health for the longest? Yeah. Like, I don't know why. It's just freaking hilarious to me. So Baron here says, make Star Wars Galaxies remake. I'm actually starting Star Wars Galaxy this week.
It's so good. Very different.
There's a it's Star Wars Resurrection. Sawman put me on. I think we're gonna play this week. So I might log in tonight. No, I gotta edit tonight. I might log in sometime this week. But yeah, I plan on is it in, I wonder if mine is Infinity. Mine says Resurrection. I just know it says Star Wars Galaxy Resurrection. Sure. But yeah, there's a couple of private servers.
There's this interesting, because Star Wars Galaxies was 2003, right? So I think there's this cut of MMORPGs like from about 2004 and before. There's a lot of things that cut, but one of the things that I think like happens after 2004, all the UIs got better, all the quality of life stuff got better. So when you go back to older MMOs, it's a learning process. So just be prepared for that. Star Wars Galaxy is incredible, but like the graphics are going to be rough. Oh yeah. The UI is rough, but once you get the hang of it, it'll make sense. And it's an amazing it's an amazing MMO. And those emulator servers are nuts. And they've even gotten like the stamp of approval from the former creator of them. Oh. Like he helped. It was like they celebrated 20 years 2023 20 years of Star Wars Galaxies, and like yeah, the Star Wars Galaxies restoration thing tweeted, and Raph Koster was all like, that's amazing kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
EverQuest? EverQuest. I don't.
EverQuest.
I.
Uh,
Uh, how do I play EverQuest? Do I just is there just private servers or is it still online or?
There's basically three ways to play EverQuest, three primary ways to play EverQuest. There's emulator server that's actually officially recognized by Darkball called P99, and that is the classic EverQuest experience. It's very hardcore, it's very old school, everything is old school. There's EverQuest Live, which has a free to play option or a regular play option, which is the live game. It's going to be difficult to find people to play with until you're max level. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't really suggest that for someone new. And then there's progression servers, which tend to start out at a certain point. There's normally one per year, and then they go through the different expansions. But yeah, EverQuest is one where it's probably my favorite MMO ever, but I struggle to recommend it to people in some ways if they've never played it. If they've played it before, I always recommend going back though.
Gotcha.
Sure.
And I'm
EverQuest
sorry.
2 just released a good one.
Apparently I missed this. I didn't get a notification. I just happened to spot it in chat. I don't know why it didn't come up on my alert box, but Guardy donated $10. Thank you so much, dude. As I say that, wow. As I say that, the alert is literally playing on screen. I
You're
don't know
just
why
on
it's such
top
a
of it.
delay.
You were just on top of it.
Okay.
That's
Thank
a
you
good
so much,
streamer right
Guardy.
there.
He he says, do you all think that AOC will have expansions or will they create new stories based on the outcomes of every possible scenario based on server history? So I actually just looked this up while I was researching a video that I'm posting soon. Should be Thursday actually. Even though the information didn't make the cut. But anyways, the sub price should, in theory, there will be expansions. First of all, to answer your question, there will be expansions. I don't think they're paid expansions though. That's what your sub costs. And somebody in chat correct me if I'm wrong, or that could be outdated information. But if I recall correctly, I don't think they plan on paid expansions. You'll just have your. I'm correct. Okay, yeah. Like you'll just pay your sub box. At the moment, it's not planned that we pay for expansions. And this is really it was a really old quote that I saw when they answered this, by the way. So do keep that in mind. But I think I was looking into the story arc system recently, and apparently maybe the expansions will have different effects depending on what story arc or what that server progress was. I don't know if that's actually going to be a thing or if I'm misremembering that, so don't quote me on that part. But I know I read something like that literally just last night. I was working on a video. So
That'd be really interesting. That'd be like not quite Baldur's Gate 3 level because I'm assuming that they have like a set number of permutations, right, with each of those. So like maybe instead of having like 10,000 different ways, you have 20 different ways it could go,
Mhm.
but that'd be really interesting to see how they manage that per server versus a single expansion because that is a lot more work, but it'd be really
yeah.
cool if it works.
So we are approaching the 1.5 hour mark. Don't leave anybody because we will be rating. I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you guys. Thank you everybody that followed, channel memberships, donations, subscribing, all that good stuff. Make sure you guys are following our co-host No One. He's live in the Twitch category as well. If you don't see him there. And of course, once again, we could not do this without you, the voices of Verra. You guys are awesome. You guys are the reason that I don't have to send Redbeard a run of show because you guys just come up with so many amazing topics of conversation, random tangents. Like, hey, Else, you want to get organized today? Nah, chat will carry us. so you
There's
guys
so
are
many good
awesome.
conversations every time. It's just easy. Like this
Yes,
podcast
man.
every Tuesday or Wednesday is just easy to do because like there's there's good discussions. It branches across the broader genre, which is frankly struggling, like we've talked about, and it's
Yeah.
kind of fun to talk about solutions.
Appreciate that, y'all. We really do. And of course, thank you once again to Redbeard Flynn for being our special guest this week. It would mean a lot to me if he could just get some sort of notifications, notice some sort of difference after the stream. If you guys can give him a follow on Twitch, even if you only pop into his stream one time to say, "Hey, we know your beard isn't actually red and that you dye it," just one time for me. Just leave him a
Wow,
follow. He's a
unbelievable.
really great guy, as you guys have obviously seen. Follow on Twitch. If you guys are on Twitch, you see it in the pinned comment. YouTube, obviously, he's tagged in the title. Appreciate you guys. We are going to raid over to Vladis. Looks like he's been live for a while, but we are going to raid him. Vladis is talking some Ashes of Creation as well. Let's see. How do I raid? I'm new to Twitch, guys. How do I do this? I promise I'm a content creator.
Creator
I do
dashboard.
this.
Or you can
There
do
we
slash
go.
raid. There you go.
Start raid. All right, there we go. But once again, thank you guys so much for the follows, likes, subs. We'll have another video out this week. And oh, I forgot to say thank you. Thank you for the success of my previous video. You guys are awesome. I think I've done closing in on like 300 subs within a matter of a week, which is crazy. So like I haven't seen that kind of jump in like a while. So you guys once again, just thank you, because yeah, appreciate you guys. And else no one just here posted a video as well, so make sure you guys check that out if you guys want some more Ashes of Creation content. For now, we are going to raid over to Mr. Vladis, and let's see what he's talking about today. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Flynn, once again.
Thank you so much for
Peace.
having me.
Yeah, it was fun.